Imagine dedicating your entire life to raising your only child. You work yourself to the bone, sacrificing every dream you ever had just to see them succeed. And then one day, one ordinary day, you stumble upon a voice message that rips your heart apart. A message where that very child calls you a burden, a nuisance, and worse, plots to steal your home, your freedom, and even your dignity. That's what happened to Margaret, a 66-year-old woman who thought her daughter loved her. What followed was betrayal, heartbreak, and one of the most satisfying stories of justice you'll ever hear. This is not just a revenge story. This is the story of a mother underestimated, broken down, and then rising back up to deliver justice with intelligence, patience, and quiet strength. Before we dive in, if you've ever been betrayed, if someone has ever underestimated you or tried to walk over your kindness, then you're going to feel this story in your bones. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join a community that knows karma has a way of hitting harder than anyone expects. Because by the time the story ends, you're going to be cheering for Margaret louder than ever. Margaret's life wasn't glamorous. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't powerful. What she was resilient. Her husband passed away when Grace, her daughter, was only 8 years old. And from that moment on, Margaret shouldered everything alone. She took on whatever work she could find, waitressing during the day, cleaning houses at night, sometimes taking double shifts at the grocery store. Her hands were rough, her body always tired, but her heart stayed soft. Why? Because every ounce of her energy went into raising Grace. She packed lunches, attended every school event, sat through long nights of homework even when her eyes could barely stay open. She gave up her dream of finishing her own education so that Grace could attend college. As long as she has opportunities I never did, it will all be worth it, Margaret would whisper to herself while folding laundry at midnight. Her friends often told her, "You spoil that girl. One day she'll thank you for all this." And Margaret believed that. She believed that her love, her sacrifices, her endless giving would one day be returned with gratitude. But life has a cruel way of testing loyalty. And Margaret was about to learn that the child she loved most in this world, the very person she sacrificed everything for, was plotting the ultimate betrayal. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening when Margaret's world cracked open. She had been fiddling with her phone, trying to figure out a notification. By accident, she played a voice message that wasn't meant for her. At first, she thought she misheard, but the voices were crystal clear. Her daughter's voice, Grace, cold, sharp, unrecognizable. "She's such a burden. Richard, once we get those documents signed, that house will be ours. She won't even know what hit her." Richard, Grace's husband, laughed. "Don't worry, baby. The doctor already signed off on those reports. Once we present them, the court will declare her incompetent. We'll have her in a home before she realizes anything. Easy money." Margaret's hands shook. Her heart pounded in her chest. She replayed it again and again, hoping she was mistaken, but each time the words stabbed deeper. Her own daughter, the same child she had raised through scraped knees, teenage heartbreak, sleepless nights, all now plotting to have her declared mentally unfit, to steal her home, to erase her life. The humiliation stung just as much as the betrayal. Grace didn't just want the house, she mocked her. She called her weak, a nuisance, dead weight. Margaret sat alone at her kitchen table that night, the voice message echoing in her mind. Tears streamed down her face. She whispered to herself, "How could you, Grace? How could you?" Let me ask you, if you heard your own child speaking about you like this, Would you confront them immediately, or would you quietly plan your next move? For days, Margaret was consumed by grief. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She'd stare at old photographs, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, Grace in her graduation gown. All those memories now felt poisoned. At one point, she thought of giving up, just letting them have the house, disappearing quietly. After all, she was just one woman against two people, younger, sharper, and willing to cheat. But then, something in her shifted. She remembered her husband's words years ago when they struggled to pay the bills. "We don't quit, Margaret. We fight." And just like that, the sorrow hardened into resolve. Margaret wiped her tears and whispered into the silence, "No, you will not take my home. You will not take my dignity. Not without a fight." And so began a war her daughter never saw coming. Margaret knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. She reached out to an attorney named Harrison Ford, not the actor, but a tough-as-nails lawyer known for protecting seniors from fraud. When she played the voicemail for him, Harrison leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't just betrayal. This is criminal. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Margaret, if you're ready to fight, I'll help you." And Margaret nodded. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. Together, they began building the case. They collected the forged medical reports Grace and Richard had fabricated. Harrison pulled strings, contacting doctors who confirmed they'd never signed those papers. Margaret learned how to record conversations, pretending to be confused and forgetful around her daughter, while secretly capturing every word. Grace would smirk whenever Margaret acted frail, patting her hand condescendingly. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of everything soon." But what Grace didn't know was that every smile, every condescending word was being recorded and would one day destroy her. But it wasn't easy. Margaret nearly slipped once, almost leaving her phone recorder on the table where Richard could have seen it. Another time, she barely managed to intercept a piece of mail Grace tried to hide. Each close call added suspense, but also sharpened Margaret's resolve. "Tell me, would you be able to play along with someone betraying you? Or would your anger spill out before you could set the trap?" The day finally came. Grace and Richard thought they had everything under control. They swaggered into court with smug smiles, papers in hand, ready to declare Margaret incompetent. But when it was Margaret's turn to speak, everything changed. Harrison stood tall. "Your Honor, before you consider these claims, I'd like to submit new evidence." One by one, the recordings played. Grace's voice, dripping with venom, Richard bragging about forged reports, their laughter about putting Margaret in a home. The courtroom was silent, Grace's face drained of color. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then the forged documents were revealed, every false signature exposed, every lie unraveled. The judge's gavel came down hard. "This is fraud. This is elder abuse. This court will not tolerate such actions." Grace stammered. Richard tried to argue, but it was over. Their empire of lies collapsed in a single afternoon. The fallout was brutal. Grace and Richard were arrested for fraud and conspiracy. Their neighbors whispered. Their friends distanced themselves. Richard lost his job. The IRS came knocking, digging into years of shady finances. And Grace, the once proud daughter who mocked her mother as a nuisance, was left disgraced, humiliated, and alone. Meanwhile, Margaret walked out of that courtroom with her head held high, her house safe, her dignity intact. The inheritance they tried to steal had slipped forever out of their grasp. Margaret could have stayed in that house, victorious, but she chose something even greater: peace. She sold the home on her own terms and moved into a senior community where she finally had time to breathe. She started painting again, joined a volunteer group, made friends who valued her, and perhaps most importantly, she forgave Grace. Not because Grace deserved it, but because Margaret deserved freedom. She set boundaries, No more second chances, no more access to her life or her peace. Instead, Margaret turned her pain into purpose. She became an advocate for other seniors, teaching them how to protect themselves from betrayal. Her story, once filled with heartbreak, now inspired others to reclaim their power. There is a special kind of justice when betrayal meets truth. Grace and Richard thought Margaret was powerless, just an old woman they could push aside. But the truth? Margaret was stronger than they ever imagined. Their scheme collapsed, their reputations crumbled, and Margaret, finally, stood tall, free, and untouchable. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud, it isn't messy. It's simply living your life with dignity while those who betrayed you drown in the mess they created. So, what can we take from Margaret's story? That true love never exploits, that boundaries are essential for survival, and that dignity and courage are worth more than any inheritance. If this story shook you, smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And tell me in the comments, what's the longest you've ever waited for karma to strike? Because sometimes justice takes time, but when it hits hard. And don't forget to subscribe and join our community of thousands who love hearing the world's most satisfying stories of karma and revenge.